Hey guys, it's Shadow the Rat, and for today's video, I wanted to give you an update on Pickle here. So, since the last update, Pickle has gone through quite a bit of stuff, and she returned this morning from her third vet visit in 2 weeks. So, anyways, Pickle was diagnosed with a Zymbal's gland tumor at the end of April, and she also had an abscess on top of it alongside an ear infection. Now, Pickle was placed on oral antibiotics, Clavamox in this case, alongside some antibiotic drops, and also Medicam to help manage any pain or inflammation. So that was the first visit, and we had a plan to go for a second visit, which we did on the 4th of May, which was last week. And Pickle had an abscess at that point that had just opened up. It's kind of closed at this point, so you can't really see it. But the vet was quite pleased to see that, because once he removed a lot of the pus from the abscess, he found that she didn't really have too much of a lump left. So you can kind of see the abscess there, the remainders of it. Anyways, he thought that that meant that perhaps she had just been dealing with an abscess this whole time instead of an abscess plus tumor. So we were pretty happy about that news, and honestly, I was hoping to make a video that was just happy, about that, but unfortunately, that's not the case. So there were some concerning things after our second visit, and the biggest two concerning things to me were that Pickle had lost nearly 10% of her body weight between the first and second visit, so that was over the course of 9 days, and Pickle's jaw had slowly been moving more and more to the right. So her incisors were no longer meeting up properly. This is called Malocclusion, and when this happens, basically you have to help the rats file down their teeth, because if their incisors are not meeting properly, then when they chew or brooks or do anything with them, they're going to be grinding them down unevenly, and part of the incisors are going to continue growing because they're not meeting anything and being ground down, and those incisors will eventually grow into the roof of the mouth and also prevent the rat from eating. So it's a pretty major issue, and typically you have two choices of action. The first is that you can go ahead and try to clip them yourself. Some people do this with baby nail clippers. Personally, I do not feel comfortable with this. Not only have I not done it myself, but there is a small chance that you will accidentally split the tooth, and this will be very painful and is dangerous for the rat. So the other option is to have the incisors burred, which is basically when they grind down the incisors using an electric nail. And they'll do this at your vet's, and they'll use some sedation while they do it. Typically, sometimes they do it without sedation, but typically they do it with sedation just because rats are pretty wiggly. Anyways, Pickle's weight and malocclusion issues were kind of concerning to me, and I also just felt like something was wrong, but I couldn't really describe it. So after the second visit, I decided to hold off on making any updates. I didn't want to kind of prematurely celebrate because it felt like it wasn't just that. So fast forward to Tuesday, and that is this Tuesday, so 2 days ago, and Pickle unfortunately started to deteriorate really quickly. She developed some neurological symptoms. First of all, she developed a head tilt. She was also really shaking as she tried to walk, and she just seemed really off balance. For example, when I put her on her back to give her medicine, and not fully on her back, just kind of sitting in this sort of position, she freaked out and she immediately wanted to flip herself back over. So clearly she felt very off balance. And in addition to that, she had this weird reflex going on where whenever she looked down, her head would immediately bob up. But it was clear that something was going on, and that was an involuntary motion. So that was all, very concerning to me, because obviously neurological symptoms are never a good sign. And I immediately made a vet visit so I could go to the vets as soon as possible. And the earliest appointment they could get me in for was Thursday in the morning, so that was today. And so we took Pickle back to the vets, and unfortunately, after seeing her and seeing the symptoms, he told me that likely we were looking at a Zymbal's gland tumor, and unfortunately, the original diagnosis seemed to stand. So, unfortunately, we are not as lucky as we thought. It is not just an abscess, it's likely a tumor. Now, as for these new symptoms, they seem to be caused by the tumor pushing the abscess into the ear canal of her left ear. So you now see that's where all the pus is. And it's clearly uncomfortable for her. She shakes her head on occasion and just seems a little bit off balance, and I'm pretty sure that's why. The vet was explaining to me that that's where the vestibular nerve is, and that controls balance, so likely that's what's being affected right now, and why Pickle seems off balance. Anyways, Pickle was doing slightly better on Wednesday, well, at least compared to Tuesday, She wasn't showing quite as many off-balance symptoms, but I think that's just because she was coping with it really well and not that she was actually feeling any better, because she's still acting pretty off-balance, so I don't think that's going to improve, sadly. The vets at this point say we can pretty much keep doing what we've been doing, but otherwise we're pretty much, at the end of our treatment options. We're just going to have to keep an eye on her and, see how she progresses. And, well, I think we're getting pretty close to the point where I'm going to have her put to sleep. Because at this point, she's not as active as she was before. She does walk around some, but she's clearly not enjoying it as much. She has trouble eating, and it's not just because of her overgrown teeth. It's genuinely this issue with, the head bobbing, and she's just not as interested in food anymore. In addition to this, she's shaking her head sometimes, which indicates she's uncomfortable there. It makes sense. I mean, I've seen all the pus in her ear, poor girl. Just overall, her quality of life has started to dip, and, if there was an end in sight, if I knew she was going to get better, or she was likely to get better, then yeah, I think it's worth working through these things, but at this point, there's really no end in sight. Pickle is not going to get better. She's just going to get worse. So making her go through this just feels like, it feels like it's torture for her, because she's not going to see the end of this. She's just going to eventually get worse. So yeah, I'm going to be putting her to sleep pretty soon. I'm not sure exactly when. I'm thinking maybe next week. I was initially going to have her teeth trimmed next week, but I don't know. It might be better just to let her go. Honestly, I am just so tired at this point, and Pickle is, she's just not feeling great, so we did what we could, and I don't want Pickle to suffer. I've made rats suffer too long waiting to be euthanized before, and I don't want to repeat that with Pickle. So I'm going to be letting her go sooner rather than later. So yeah, I will see you guys later, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.